This is a humble shop vac. Nothing special here or complicated. It has one job and one job only, and that's to suck as hard as possible. It's a common fixture that you'll see in pretty much most workshops. And to me, at least in my workshop, it's probably one of the most utilized and most versatile tools that I actually own. This shop vac, just like an excitable puppy, follows me constantly around the shop. Come on boy, you wanna come to the table saw? You wanna go for a walk? Oh, who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? And that's because pretty much every tool I have in the shop either directly or indirectly benefits from having the shop vac. I use it extensively here at the table saw. It plugs directly into the dust shroud that I made for my table saw blade. I also use it extensively here at the router table. It plugs directly into the router table fence and provides really good additional support to the main dust collection at the bottom. And of course I use it with a lot of my tools like my sanders, my domino jointer and other power tools. And lastly, of course, I use it to clean up the shop, to clean surfaces, workbenches, tools, etc. After all, it is, well, a vacuum cleaner. Because I do use it all over the shop, I'm constantly moving it from one location to another. That in itself is generally not a big deal. It is maneuverable, it is on wheels, and it's not difficult to move. But then once it's moved, I do have to plug it in. So the power cables do have to plug into the wall somewhere. And of course the hoses have to drape across whatever it is that I'm doing onto the work surface or onto the router table or onto the table saw. And this is not often ideal. Often they get in the way, they can cause a tripping hazard, or they're just awkward to use because of where they have to go. So that's why in this video, I'm going to show you how I made this overhead arm dust collection system that fits into a standard shop vac that works with my table saw as well as my router. And in fact, it worked so well that I made a second one for the shop. So follow along in this video if you want to see how I made this, and maybe this is something that might suit your particular workshop. So this project's going to begin like so many of my other workshop projects, and that's by breaking down some formply. The design I'm trying to keep simple, and by simple I mean probably more complicated than it really needs to be. The whole thing is going to be made from formply, including the hinge, other than a bit of leftover dowel I'll use as the pivot point. Next, over at the miter saw, I square up one end and then measure and cut my arm pieces to length. This boom arm is going to be about 1 meter long, or about 3.2 feet, long enough that it will easily hover over where the dust shroud and router table fence are located. I'm pretty confident you don't have to do this, but while researching for inspiration on my design, every single video kept telling me the same thing, that while they didn't think the holes were vital, it certainly wasn't going to hurt it. I'd rather not break from that tradition, so I'm of course going to add in some weight reduction. The standard convention seems to just use holes, but I thought I'd go a little further and cut out rectangular windows instead, just to keep it a little bit fancy. On the drill press, I'm gonna hog out the corners of the windows using a Forstner bit. I probably could have used a smaller bit, but this one was already chucked into the drill press, so I just went with this one. I did the first few holes before I realised that I could just tape the two sides together and do them both at the same time. With the holes cut, we just need to join them together using a jigsaw. I decided to do this outside since jigsaws make a lot of sawdust, and doing it outside just saves the cleanup. Right, so I have my sides done and I've cut out my speed holes, weight holes, I don't know. We've made it a lot lighter. Is it necessary? Probably not. But I'd rather have it than find out it's too heavy or anything like that. So it's definitely something that I prefer to have on. However, having cut it out with the jigsaw, am I thrilled with the finish? I know it's a shop project, but the perfectionist in me doesn't like all these jagged edges and how it's not quite uniform. So I'm gonna make template on the laser, pattern bit on the router, clean all this up, get it nice and consistent. So do you have to do this? Of course not. It's purely up to personal preference and aesthetics, and it's really not going to make any real massive difference. But hey, if we're going to do it, you might as well, you know, go overboard. So quickly hopping onto the computer, I whipped up a template in Lightburn and cut it out on the laser. The template is secured onto the piece using some double-sided tape, and I then run along the profile using a pattern bit on the router. After completing the templating, I'm going to run the edges over with a small roundover bit. Formply, when cut even on a router or table saw, can leave an edge that can easily cut your skin, sort of like a paper cut. Just ask me how I know that. Raining over the edges will mean it will be soft to the touch, as well as look a lot cooler. For the top pieces that accept the pivot pin, I'm again going to use a template that I cut out on the laser and a pattern bit on the router. There are of course lots of ways to cut circles, or in this case a half circle, the simplest being a jigsaw or even just rough cutting and finishing on a disc sander or palm sander. It doesn't need to be perfect, but the holes you drill for the pivot are going to have to be. So for me it's much easier to once again create a template on the laser that has the center location marked and use that on both ends. Templating like this is why I'm a huge fan of having lasers in the workshop. I repeated the same technique for the bracket caps, and then I cut the holes that accept the dowel on the drill press. Taping these two pieces together will ensure that the holes are exactly parallel to each other. Next is assembly, nothing fancy for the main arm, just going to use some screws. I do pre-drill and countersink for each one, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. To make sure the top and bottom are aligned, I insert some dowel to line up the holes and then check for squareness. Once I was happy with that, I just repeat the same process as before to attach this part to the arm. And with that, our boom arm is pretty much assembled. Easy peasy. Right, so let's see what we've got so far. We've got our arm, our beam, our whatever you want to call it. I've got our brackets. Now, this bracket has a hole in here. It's two pieces joined together and there's no hole in this one. So this is going to be the bottom bracket, and the dowel is going to sit through there on top of this one, and then I've got one that's a complete through, so that's going to be on the top. And hopefully what that means is that I'll just cut it here somewhere, maybe put some sort of like pin, like a little dowel through it, just so that if I want to take it out I can. But that's the idea of what we're going for. So that's going to be the bracket that screws to the wall. Now some of you will be thinking, will that be strong enough? I think it will be. Okay, this is actually quite light now. So it's not very heavy, it's not very thick, it's not a very big or a long arm, it's only a meter long, this one. So I think there'll be plenty of strength once this is all screwed together. However, I think just to be on the safe side, I might laser cut a little sort of, I guess, bracket here to go across here just to provide a bit more stability. I don't think it needs it, but hey, again, better to be overcautious than have it fall on top of the table, especially if you were, you know, cutting something. So I think what I'll do now is attach these to the base here and then think about how I'm going to attach this to the wall, which shouldn't be too complicated, and then make some brackets to go this way. So I think that's going to be where the next steps are. Right, so I'm ready to attach the bracket to the wall. I've gone ahead and just countersunk some locations for the screws, or the self-tapping metal screws that are going to go through there. And our bracket's going to sit up on that pillar there. Now, looking at it, I'm just not really sure it really needs this bracket. I think I will eventually put it on there, so I'll just get a metal strip just to act as a brace. But in the meantime, I'll just test it how it is. It's got to break 4 screws, and they're pretty long screws. But I guess we'll find out, yeah? So it won't hurt to put the bracket on there, obviously, but if it doesn't need it, well, we'll see. We'll find out. Well, it's up there, and so far it looks good. So the bracket is holding absolutely no problem. So I'm in two minds if we need to bother, but I think, oh, I don't know, I probably will put a bracket here. It's probably the safe thing to do, isn't it? The responsible thing to do. So I will do that. I'm just not going to do it right now while I'm still working out the, I don't know, the kinks or whatever. So we've got our arm going across the table. I can reach it. It swings right out of the way very nicely. So we've got it nice and level at least. And we can bring it back over the table. So the only thing left is to put some hosing in it. But that's still coming. So I've ordered it, that's coming. And the idea obviously is that it will feed into here, and I'd like to make a quick release, so go from here to the router table. So I'm going to fast forward to the ducting arriving, and let's see how that looks. The The pipe that I'm going to use is a flexible polyurethane one. It's really similar stuff to the one that I used for the main dust collection system, but obviously only a smaller diameter. The internal diameter of this one is about 38 millimeters, so it should suit most shop vacs and give me plenty of wiggle room just in case. I'm going to link to the one that I bought in the description below. But before I can do anything with the hose, I'm going to need to cut a hole in the bottom side of the arm to give me somewhere to feed the hose into. I figured it would be easier to feed the hose while the arm was still on the table than attempting to do it while it's up on the workshop wall. The next morning I stopped by our local tool supplier and picked up this relatively inexpensive shop vac. It's nothing overtly special here, pretty bog standard, and it should do the job just fine for our needs. I'll put a link in the description to the one I bought if you're really interested. I set up the vac underneath my sliding miter sled, and the hose will then feed directly into the vac, which I got really lucky with, as you'll soon see. Okay, so don't mind the noise if you can hear that. That's just my next door neighbor power washing something. Doesn't matter. This is the hose that came with the shop vac, and this is the connector that connects to the shop vac itself. And this hose is a little bit smaller than the hose that I've got here. So what I've done is I've just taken a screwdriver and taken this adapter off, and looking at it, I think we're going to get really lucky here, because I think that that's going to fit exactly over this pipe. So if I try this one-handed, oh yeah, so that's a really good, oh there, that's a really good fit. So we got really lucky. That means that I can connect this directly to the shop vac without modifying cutting hoses or anything like that. So very fortunate. So there's the fitting that goes into the shop vac. As you can see, we've been very fortunate that this hose fits exactly in here. And it's actually screws in really nicely. So that's just going to go straight into here, like so. No modifications. Beautiful. Right, so let's turn our attention to the other side of the pipe now. And again, we've gotten really lucky when it comes to the fit for the existing accessories that came with the shop vac. This particular pipe is 38 millimeters inner diameter, but it's 40 millimeters outside diameter. And the existing accessory or handle that came with the shop vac actually fits into this exactly. So there's actually a few little ridges in here that actually screw really nicely into it. And once that's in there, it's difficult to actually get it out. So it's almost like it was made for it. Now, I understand that I've gotten really lucky here. If you happen to be doing this project and find that you don't have this sort of perfect match here, then there are accessories and other attachments that you can buy that will reduce or enlarge the size of different tubes, different vacuum accessories to accommodate maybe the hose that you've got. So here's one that I've got that I bought from Timbercon, and this one they sort of plug together, and it allows you to sort of reduce or expand your vacuum or your pipe or whatever connections that you're trying to do. So that's one solution. The other one is if you've got a friend who has like a 3D printer, then that would actually be ideal. You can actually 3D print an adapter or something that will very specifically fit your particular pipe or shop vac. And in fact, It's one of the reasons why I'm seriously considering potentially getting my own 3D printer. But other than that, again, we've gotten really lucky when it comes to my dust shroud. This fits in it exactly. There's a little rubber O-ring in there that locks this into place. So that fits really nicely. And then this is transferable to my router table where it plugs into the back of the fence. And of course, because we were using the original handle that came with the Shopvac, then all of the accessories are attached to it, no problem whatsoever. So if I do want to do a little bit of cleanup on the table saw, I can attach the brush attachment and do some cleaning. If there's a little crevice that I need to get to, we can put the crevice tool, no problem at all. So that's a little handy extra bonus thing, I guess, that we've got from this. And I see no reason why, if you were doing the same thing, you can take advantage of the accessories that come with your Shopvac. So the other accessory I've installed for the Shopvac is this wireless relay. So it's a wireless remote control that turns the power on and off, and that's super handy. Obviously, if I'm all the way over here at the router table and I'm wanting to route something and I want to quickly turn the dust collection on, I don't want to have to walk all the way over to the other end of the table to turn it on. So just by using the remote, we can turn it on. And then obviously we can turn it off. So super convenient, really easy to install. Didn't cost that much from my local big box, and makes a huge difference. It means that I can easily turn the dust collection off at the table saw really quickly. If you've made it this far, then probably what you're more interested in is this particular boom arm that I made after the one from the table saw. It's identical to how I made the one for the table saw, but there's some key differentiations for this one, and I'll take you on a tour of it. So the first key differentiation is the length. This one's much longer than the one over the table saw. Now the one over the table saw is about 1 meter long. This one's closer to 1.7 meters long, so almost double the distance. The other thing you'll notice from this angle is that there is a power cord here. So there's a power cord that's feeding down the arm, down the back, and then into the wall. And this is going to allow me to connect things like my sander and my domino. I laser cut a hook here, and this allows me to wind on any of the excess power cable or lead that the power tool that I'm connecting to might have. So it'll make it nice and easy to keep it neat and out of the way. Now, because of the additional length, there has been an increase in the weight, and that's even with the additional holes cut out. To ensure that it can take the additional weight, I've added some additional brackets to the wall mount. And above, you'll also notice that I've attached some wire that will help take some of the load on the arm. So there you have it, a pretty comprehensive overhead dust collection for my table saw, my router, and of course my workbench. I've been using the solution now for a couple weeks, and I hate to use the term, but it has been a bit of a game changer. It's made it a lot easier to keep the shop clean. I'm no longer tripping over cables or any pipes laying on the ground, which is really important when you consider that this is obviously a smaller workspace shop. So if you've got a smaller shop, then maybe something like this might be exactly what you need. If you're interested in building one for yourself, I will include my SKETCHUP file, which you can use, adapt, or maybe even change completely to build something to your needs or desires. So that's it for this video. Thanks very much to my channel sponsors. Thanks very much for everyone for watching, and I will see you on the next one. What is that? What? Why is the floor wet? Shop-vac! Before I go, I just want to do a quick thank you and shout out to my latest channel member, AKP More. Thank you for your support, and welcome to the Barber's Paddock.